Beneath the endless sky, the ocean waits. It breathes with tides, steady and eternal. Waves rise, fall, and return as they always have. Yet tonight, the sea feels different, restless. A low hum drifts through the water like smoke. It is a song, faint and sorrowful, older than memory. Sailors shiver when they hear it in the wind. They whisper of curses and voices from the deep. But the sea keeps its secrets close, guarded in silence. In the heart of these waters dwells Poseidon, Lord of storms, keeper of currents, ruler of all below. He watches the world with eyes as endless as the ocean. His power is vast, yet even he feels the song. It threads through his palace of coral and pearl. It presses against his heart, heavy with grief. He knows this melody is not ordinary. It belongs to a siren, one bound by sorrow. Her voice is both a gift and a wound, and her story begins where the waves meet the night. This is the tale of Poseidon and the siren's curse. The ocean stretched wide, calm and endless. Waves touched the horizon like silver threads in twilight. Above, the moon poured light upon restless waters. For days, the sea had been gentle, almost too gentle. Fishermen spoke of tides that obeyed without question. Sailors whispered that storms seemed reluctant to rise. In Poseidon's realm, silence carried its own weight. The sea god sat upon a throne carved from coral. Pearls glowed around him, casting soft, unearthly light. His trident rested against the steps, still and silent. He felt the pulse of the ocean as if it breathed. Every current was a thought, every tide a heartbeat. Yet tonight, something lingered beneath the rhythm. A pause between waves, a hush between whispers. It was not storm, nor hunger, nor shifting moonlight. It was a presence, distant yet near, soft yet sharp. Poseidon leaned forward, listening with more than ears. The sea itself spoke to him, though wordless. It carried a song, faint but steady, through its bones. The song curled like smoke in hidden caverns below. No mortal could hear it without trembling. To them, it was only a rumor told at night. But to Poseidon, it was clear as thunder in silence. He closed his eyes, and the song shaped itself. It was sorrow, unbroken and endless, older than storms. It pulled at him, not with force, but with weight. The palace grew quieter as even the nymphs stilled. They felt it too, though they dared not speak. He rose slowly, the ocean stirring with his movement. Fish scattered in silver arcs, sensing their lord's unrest. Something wakes in the deep, he murmured to himself. His voice rolled like a tide against the marble walls. No one answered, for the sea itself waited. The song continued, weaving through current and coral. It held no malice, yet it unsettled the waters. It was not a cry for power, but for memory. Poseidon walked through his hall, past silent statues. They told stories of ages when gods shaped the seas. Now those stories seemed to echo with the song. The sound followed him, never loud, always near. It grew sharper when he touched the cold surface. The moon shivered across the waves as if listening. Far away, sailors sat on decks with wide eyes. They felt their hearts ache for reasons unknown. They hummed the tune without knowing why. It was not a call to danger, but to longing. Back in the palace, Poseidon's brow furrowed. He knew songs held power greater than storms. Once, he had given sirens their voices. Songs to guide, to warn, to protect the seas. But this melody was none of those gifts. It was fractured, wounded, bound to sorrow. And it spread across his kingdom like a tide. He stood at the edge of his chamber and waited. The ocean pressed against the walls like a heartbeat. The song swelled once more, wrapping him in grief. "Who sings in my waters?" Poseidon whispered. The sea gave no answer, only the song itself. In that silence, he knew the calm was an illusion. The storm was not of wind or wave, but of memory. And the memory was not his own, yet it called. He felt its weight, deep as trenches, cold as night. The calm before the storm was not peace. It was the waiting breath before truth returned. And Poseidon, lord of the sea, could not turn away. The night deepened, and the sea carried whispers. A melody rose, soft at first, then clear as moonlight. It drifted across the waves, winding through salt air. Not sharp, not dangerous, but haunting in its beauty. Sailors leaned forward, ears straining to catch each note. The song brushed against them like fingers on glass. It was not the call of hunger they feared. It was sorrow, pure and unbroken, filling the horizon. On one ship, an old captain stood very still. He had heard songs before, sharp with temptation. This was different, deeper, older, carrying a wound. The crew felt it too, though none spoke aloud. They stared into the dark, searching for its source. The sea shimmered, though no figure appeared in sight. The melody rose again, threading through wood and rope. Men clenched fists without knowing why they trembled. One whispered a prayer, another pressed eyes shut. Yet none turned away, bound by longing they could not name. The song carried stories no words could hold. It told of loss and waiting, of tides unending. It told of love broken, of promises forgotten by time. And still it lingered, patient, wrapping the ship in grief. Far below, Poseidon followed the melody's path. It reached his palace like a river finds the sea. Every stone, every pearl seemed to tremble with sound. He recognized the pattern woven in sorrowful threads. It was the song of a siren, but unlike the rest. Their voices often shimmered bright, sharp, filled with lure. This voice carried no trap, only truth and pain. Poseidon's gaze hardened, though not with anger. He remembered the gift he had given long ago. Voices shaped by tides, meant to guard or guide. But here was a voice bound by chains of memory. He rose again, his trident catching the dim glow. The waters outside stirred, sensing his intention. He would find the source, for silence no longer served. Above, the sailor's ship rocked gently, cradled by tide. The men whispered of omens, of curses hidden. Still the song wrapped around them, tender and relentless. No storm struck, no wave threatened, only music. Yet their hearts carried storms that words could not still. The captain bowed his head, remembering forgotten grief. He knew then the song was not for them. It was for the sea, for something older. And still they listened, unable to turn away. The melody swirled into the night like mist. It climbed the masts, curled through the sails, softened the ropes. It reached every ear, every heart, every quiet space. The youngest sailor wept, though he did not know why. He felt as if the ocean itself mourned with him. And perhaps it did, for even the waves slowed. They listened too, caught in the spell of sorrow. Far in the depths, Poseidon closed his eyes once more. He felt the ache of the song pierce his chest. It was not mortal grief, fleeting and small. It was grief that spanned centuries, carried by water. It weighed like stone and yet floated like foam. A paradox, both heavy and endless, yet delicate. He whispered into the current, though none heard. "Your voice reaches me, daughter of the deep." The water trembled, the song shifting ever so slightly. It was as if the singer, far away, had listened. And in that moment, Poseidon knew the truth. The voice belonged to one long cursed, long forgotten. Her sorrow had become the sea's secret lullaby. And now, that lullaby reached him, demanding to be heard. The siren song was no longer rumor, no longer shadow. It was alive, and it would not fade. The ocean itself carried her grief upon every wave. And the night belonged to her sorrowful hymn. The sea was restless, though the winds were still. Currents twisted beneath the surface as if uneasy. Creatures darted from shadows, sensing something unseen. In Poseidon's halls, silence weighed heavier than stone. The song had not ended. It lingered like a ghost. Each note carried sorrow that refused to fade away. Then the Nereids came, their faces pale with worry. They drifted through the currents, eyes lowered in fear. They bowed before their lord, hesitant to speak aloud. "Great Poseidon," one whispered, her voice trembling. "The waters carry a song that stirs unease." Her words echoed what he already knew within. Another nymph lifted her gaze, voice soft as foam. "It is not mortal, nor storm, nor passing omen." Her tone faltered, but still she forced the truth. "It is the song of a cursed siren." The hall darkened as if the sea itself recoiled. Poseidon's grip tightened upon the shaft of his trident. He looked into their eyes, searching for certainty. They did not flinch, though fear wove through their words. "She wanders the currents, unseen, bound in sorrow." Her voice threads through the ocean, touching every wave. Poseidon spoke, his voice deep as rolling thunder. "Long have sirens sung in these waters without harm. But this voice is different, heavy with chains." The Nereids exchanged glances, shimmering like broken glass. One whispered, "She is the one who defied the pact." A hush fell, as though the ocean itself listened. Poseidon's brow furrowed, shadows deepening on his face. He remembered the old vow, spoken ages past. Sirens were given voices to guide and to guard, never to deceive with grief or empty longing. Yet one had strayed, her song breaking the bond. The curse had bound her, sorrow her only companion. Now her voice had returned, stronger than before. The Nereids trembled, unsure if wrath would fall. But Poseidon's gaze did not blaze with anger. Instead, it carried the weight of recognition. He turned from them, his steps echoing like waves. "Her song is not merely sorrow," he said slowly. "It is a wound carried through centuries of tide." The nymphs bowed their heads, unwilling to speak more. Poseidon moved to the great window of his hall. The ocean spread beyond, dark and infinite. He could feel her song threading through the water. Each note struck him like memory, ancient and cold. The Nereids hovered behind him, silent as stone. They waited for command, for judgment, for direction. But Poseidon gave none, lost in thought and song. He whispered, almost to himself, yet the sea heard. A voice bound by sorrow can unbalance all waters. Even the calmest sea may drown in such grief. The nymphs shuddered, their forms flickering like mist. They knew the truth of his words too well. For the ocean was not merely waves and salt. It was memory, emotion, and the echo of eternity. A siren cursed to sing in sorrow could shift it all. Poseidon stood still, his eyes upon the horizon. The song lingered, neither near nor far, but everywhere. It wrapped itself through coral, through current, through silence. And though he had not yet seen her face, he knew. The cursed siren was calling not only to the sea. She was calling to him, and he could not ignore it. Long before the night of sorrow, there was a pact. The sea remembers, even when mortals forget. Poseidon had given the sirens their voices with care. They were not curses, but gifts woven from tide. Their songs were to guide ships safely through storms. They were to warn sailors of reefs and dangers. Their melodies were beacons, not traps or lures. In return, the sirens swore a sacred vow. They promised to sing only in service to the sea. Their voices would carry truth, not false desire. Their songs would honor the balance of water. For many ages, the pact held without break. Sailors blessed the sirens for their strange, clear songs. The ocean thrived under harmony of promise kept. But one siren strayed from the path of duty. Her heart was captured by a mortal wanderer. He was a sailor, lost upon a storm's edge. She sang not to guide, but to comfort him. Her song lifted him from despair and fear. And for a moment, love bloomed between worlds. But mortals are fleeting, bound to fragile time. The sailor was taken by waves before dawn. The siren's grief split her vow in silence. She sang not for duty, but for sorrow. Her melody rose with loss instead of guidance. The pact shattered like glass beneath the sea. Poseidon's law could not be ignored or broken. The gift of voice became her endless burden. Her song was bound to sorrow forevermore. No joy, no laughter, no guiding light remained. Her sisters wept, but could not change her fate. She drifted through ages, carrying grief in melody. Sailors feared her not for death, but despair. Her voice did not kill, but it hollowed hearts. It left men longing for things they could not name. It made seas heavy, storms restless, tides uneasy. Poseidon watched from afar, bound by his own decree. He had forged the law, and law must remain. Yet deep within, regret pooled like a hidden current. He had given the gift, and so cursed her. Now, centuries later, her song had returned. It was stronger, clearer, echoing across all waters. The Nereids spoke of her, whispering her old name, but none dared to say it too loud. For names hold power, and sorrow remembers. Poseidon walked among coral pillars, lost in thought. He recalled her face, once bright as morning. Now it lingered only a shadow in memory. He wondered if her voice carried her own pain, or if it had become the ocean's pain instead. For sorrow this deep could spread like flood water. It could turn calm seas into restless storms. It could pull hearts into longing with no end. The pact had been simple, yet the cost vast. One broken vow had become a curse eternal, and the ocean could not ignore its song. Poseidon knew then what he must do. He could no longer sit in coral halls waiting. The past had risen, and the debt remained. The siren's sorrow was not hers alone. It belonged to the sea, to all who sailed, and perhaps to him as well. The ocean stirred, hearing his unspoken resolve. Currents shifted, carrying whispers through dark trenches. He lifted his trident, its weight steady and true. The time had come to face the forgotten pact, to meet the siren whose sorrow shook the world, and to decide if mercy or law would prevail. The sea floors shimmered with quiet light as Poseidon walked. His trident glowed faintly, casting ripples across the coral walls. Every step carried weight, not of water, but of memory. The ocean was silent, as if holding its breath for him. Creatures of the deep retreated into shadows as he passed. They sensed the storm within their lord, unspoken yet strong. The Nereids had gathered at the edge of a reef, their faces pale, their eyes filled with questions unspoken. They bowed, but their silence was heavy, like stone. One stepped forward, her voice trembling as she spoke. "My lord." Her song reaches even the furthest currents now. Poseidon nodded, though his gaze was distant, far beyond. The water carried faint echoes of a haunting melody. It drifted through the abyss, soft yet inescapable. It was not the song of a monster, but of sorrow. He knew it too well. for he had heard it before. The ocean itself seemed to tremble under its weight. It seeped into the currents, into the tides, into hearts. It touched even the gods, though they spoke not of it. Poseidon raised his trident, letting it hum with power. The coral reef vibrated as if answering his call. He looked to the horizon, where light faded into abyss. "Prepare the paths," he said, his voice deep and final. The Nereids bowed again, their forms dissolving into currents. They would spread word, clear the waters, guide his way. Poseidon stepped forward, leaving the safety of coral halls. Ahead lay the trench of forgotten voices, her dwelling, a place untouched by light, feared by mortals and gods. Legends claimed whispers lingered there, voices of the drowned. But he knew better. Those were fragments of her song. Each note lingered long after it was sung. They clung to the rocks, the currents, the bones of ships. The trench was her prison and her sanctuary. It was where sorrow had rooted itself in stone. As he neared, the water grew colder, heavier. Even Poseidon felt the pressure settle on his chest. His grip on the trident tightened, steady and unyielding. The song grew clearer, wrapping around him like mist. It spoke not in words, but in emotions untamed. Loneliness, longing, grief without end, love without return. He closed his eyes, letting it wash over him. Memories stirred, both his and not his. He felt the siren's despair, as if it were his own. Her song carried pieces of her heart, scattered in water. At last, the trench opened before him, a yawning dark. Its walls stretched downward like teeth of the earth. Poseidon did not hesitate, though the shadows thickened. He entered, the trident's glow piercing the gloom. Shapes shifted in the dark, illusions born of song. Faces of sailors, their eyes filled with yearning. Voices called to him, though none were real. They were echoes of sorrow, fragments of broken vows. He pressed onward, deeper, where silence nearly drowned sound. At the core of the trench, he found her. The siren floated, her form both human and otherworldly. Her hair drifted like seaweed, her eyes pale and endless. Her lips moved, and the water vibrated with melody. It was heartbreak given shape, sorrow given sound. Poseidon stopped, the weight of centuries pressing down. She saw him, and her song faltered for a breath. Recognition flickered in her gaze, fragile as a ripple. She did not flee, nor did she welcome him. Instead, her voice returned, softer, questioning, unresolved. The god of the sea stood before her curse, and in that moment, silence stretched between them like fate. Her song wavered as Poseidon drew near, fragile as a thread. The silence that followed was heavier than any storm. He stood still, the glow of his trident bathing her form. She floated before him, neither spirit nor mortal, lost in between. Her eyes searched his, as though she recognized something long forgotten. "Lord of the sea," her voice whispered, soft as broken glass. It was not a greeting, nor was it an accusation. It was recognition, and it carried centuries of sorrow. Poseidon lowered his trident, its light dimming against the darkness. "I know your voice," he said, steady but deep with memory. She smiled faintly, though it held no joy, only grief. "My voice knows you too," she replied, her tone like waves. They lingered in silence, their words caught in the current. Her song returned, not to lure, but to reveal. He felt her pain ripple through him, layer upon layer. She sang of the vow, the love, and the loss. She sang of the sailor, and the night the sea claimed him. Poseidon heard not just sorrow, but devotion beyond mortality. It was love that had broken the pact, not malice. Still, the curse bound her, twisting gift into torment. Her voice was no longer guidance, but endless lament. "Do you see now?" she asked, her eyes pleading. "My song cannot cease, for it is all I am." Poseidon's heart, vast as the ocean, stirred with regret. He remembered granting them voices, gifts of tide and truth. Never had he thought love could bend those currents astray. Yet love was stronger than law, deeper than decree. He reached out, his hand steady though heavy with choice. The water pulsed around them, as if listening to his will. "You are not a curse," he said, his tone resolute. "You are bound because I bound you, not the sea." Her gaze widened, her song faltered to a trembling silence. "No god has ever spoken thus," she whispered, nearly disbelief. Poseidon lifted the trident, its light cutting through shadows. The trench itself seemed to lean closer, waiting for his command. "The sea remembers," he said, "but it can also forgive." The siren's eyes filled with something long lost, hope. But hope was fragile, as easily broken as glass. Her voice trembled, torn between faith and fear. "What if the curse cannot be undone?" she asked. "What if my song is forever sorrow, even with mercy?" Poseidon lowered the trident until it rested on the sand. "Then I will carry it with you," he replied softly. Her body stilled, the weight of his words surrounding her. No god had ever offered to share the burden. Her melody rose again, but this time it shifted. Sorrow still lingered, but beneath it was warmth. It was not joy, but the memory of joy. Poseidon closed his eyes, letting it wash over him. The song no longer felt like chains, but like waves. Waves that crashed, receded, and returned again. Her curse was not only hers, it belonged to the ocean. And he was the ocean, its keeper, its voice, its heart. He opened his eyes and met her gaze again. "There is a path," he said, voice steady as tides. "It may not free you, but it may change you." The siren tilted her head, curiosity stirring in her sorrow. Her voice quieted. A single word left her lips. "How?" Poseidon raised the trident high, and the trench trembled. Light spilled forth, curling like dawn through endless night. The ocean itself stirred, as though waiting for his choice. And in that moment, the god and the siren faced destiny. The trench glowed faintly as Poseidon lifted his trident higher. Light curled like rivers of dawn, chasing shadows from the abyss. The siren shielded her eyes, unaccustomed to such brilliance. Her song trembled in the glow, wavering between sorrow and hope. Poseidon's voice filled the deep, calm yet commanding. "The ocean holds memory, but it also holds renewal." He turned the trident slowly, and the current obeyed. Ripples spread outward, carrying warmth through the frozen trench. The siren felt the current pass through her hollow chest. For the first time in centuries, it did not hurt. Her song rose instinctively, uncertain, but no longer only grief. It wove with the current, shaping into something new. Poseidon watched her closely, his gaze steady and solemn. "This is the path," he said, his tone unyielding. "You cannot silence your voice, but you can change it." The siren's lips parted, disbelief shadowing her pale features. "Change?" she echoed, the words soft as a ripple. Poseidon lowered the trident, its glow pulsing gently. "Yes," he said, "for sorrow is not your only truth." He stepped closer, the current swirling around them both. "Your song is tied to your heart, not just your grief." Her eyes shimmered, uncertain tears mixing with salt water. "I sang for love, and love was taken from me." Poseidon nodded, his expression deep with memory. "And love remains, even in absence, even in loss." The siren's voice broke, a fragile whisper. "But my curse, my vow, how can it be undone?" The god of the sea stood taller, his presence vast. Vows cannot be undone, but they can be transformed. He raised his hand, letting currents spiral between them. You broke your vow for love, not for malice. The sea does not punish love. It remembers it. Her song faltered, and then grew steady in the glow. No longer only sorrow, it carried echoes of longing. And beneath longing, the faintest trace of tenderness. The trench quivered, rocks humming with her shifting melody. Poseidon's heart stirred, though his face remained calm. The ocean itself seemed to lean closer, listening. "Let your song guide once more," he said firmly. "Not to reefs, not to despair, but to truth." She closed her eyes, and her body trembled. The current around her swirled, lifting strands of her hair. Her lips parted, and the melody changed once more. It carried sorrow still, but it also carried light. Not joy, but the promise that joy could return. The waters shimmered as if touched by starlight. Creatures hidden in the dark swam nearer, unafraid. They felt the shift, the balance returning in song. The siren gasped softly, her hands touching her throat. My voice. It feels different, as if it breathes. Poseidon inclined his head, his trident steady at his side. "You are not bound to sorrow alone," he said. "The ocean gave you voice, and it can give again." Her eyes met his, wide with wonder and fear. "I do not know if I can hold this change." "You do not hold it alone," Poseidon replied. "The sea bears it with you, as do I." The siren's heart surged with a warmth she thought lost. Her song rose again, this time unbroken, clear, alive. It echoed through the trench, carrying to distant currents. The ocean stirred in answer, as if exhaling relief. Poseidon lowered his gaze, his thoughts heavy but resolute. He knew this was only the beginning of her path. The curse was not shattered, only reshaped by will. But it was enough for now to turn despair into dawn. The trench, once a tomb of sorrow, now pulsed with promise. And the god of the sea stood at its heart, silent. The ocean shifted, carrying the echo of her renewed song afar. Currents reached distant shores, stirring sailors in their dreams. They woke with tears, though none knew why they wept. Above, the waves shimmered under moonlight, restless with change. In the trench, Poseidon stood still, his trident pulsing faintly. The siren's voice wrapped around him, fragile but no longer broken. It was sorrow reshaped, longing softened by light. Her eyes glimmered, uncertain yet filled with a strange strength. She touched her throat again, as if confirming it was real. "I thought my voice was lost forever," she whispered. Poseidon's gaze held hers, steady as the tide. It was never lost, only hidden beneath sorrow too deep. The siren tilted her head, curiosity rising like dawn. "Why now?" she asked, her tone fragile as sea glass. "Why return after so many ages of silence?" Poseidon's expression shifted, his face shadowed by memory. "Because the ocean called me," he said, his voice low. "And because I could no longer ignore what I created." The siren's lips parted in quiet realization. "You regret giving us voices?" Poseidon shook his head, his trident humming softly. "No," he said firmly, "but I regret leaving you alone with them." Her body stilled, her gaze falling to the dark sand. She thought of her sisters, their songs long gone from memory. She thought of the sailor, his face swallowed by waves. And she thought of herself, a voice turned to curse. The silence stretched, heavier than the weight of the sea. Finally, she lifted her gaze back to him. "What would you have me sing now?" Poseidon stepped closer, currents bending around his presence. "Sing truth," he said, his tone calm but resolute. Not sorrow alone, not joy alone. Sing the balance of both. The siren blinked, confusion mixing with wonder. Balance? She echoed softly, her fingers tightening at her sides. Poseidon lowered the trident, resting it against the seabed. The ocean is not only storm, nor only calm. It is both, and it is whole because of it. Her breath caught, her heart stirring with recognition. Her song had always carried extremes, either love or despair, but never both, never the wholeness of what was true. She closed her eyes, drawing water deep into her chest. The silence pulsed as if waiting for her choice. Then her lips parted, and a new song began. It was sorrow still, but woven with tenderness. It was grief, but it carried the echo of love. It spoke of longing, but also of memory cherished. Her melody filled the trench, brushing against stone and shadow. The water brightened, glowing with pale silver light. Even Poseidon felt its pull, his chest tightening. This was no longer a curse, it was transformation. Her voice was no longer hollow, but alive. The ocean itself answered, currents rising in harmony. Creatures swam from caves, drawn to the sound. Even the corals glowed faintly, as if awakening. Poseidon bowed his head, closing his eyes briefly. You are becoming what you were always meant to be. The siren gasped, her voice faltering as doubt returned. But what if I fail? Poseidon opened his eyes, their depth endless as trenches. Then you fail, and rise again, as the tide does. Her heart stilled, then beat stronger beneath his words. She sang again, steadier, carrying sorrow and strength together. And the ocean carried it farther than ever before. Far beyond the trench, far beyond the horizon, it spread. Mortals awoke with strange dreams of both grief and hope. Sailors whispered of a song that healed the heart. And for the first time in centuries, the siren wept freely. Her tears mingled with the sea but did not weigh her down. She lifted her gaze to Poseidon, eyes shining bright. Is this what you wished of me? Poseidon's voice was soft, but vast as the ocean. No, he said, this is what you wished of yourself. The siren's song lingered in the deep, weaving through currents like silver thread. It carried sorrow and hope, clashing yet entwined like waves. Above, the sea grew calmer, moonlight dancing across its skin. Sailors at sea felt peace, where fear once gripped their hearts. They spoke of the ocean as if it breathed differently tonight. In the trench, Poseidon stood with quiet gravity. The glow of his trident softened, yet its power remained vast. The siren hovered before him, her voice fading to silence. Her eyes searched his face for meaning, for approval. You ask me to change what I am, she whispered. Poseidon's gaze did not waver, his tone low but firm. I ask you to remember you were more than sorrow. Her lips trembled, her heart still heavy with centuries of grief. But sorrow shaped me, she said, her voice sharp with truth. It is all I have carried since he sank into the sea. Poseidon's chest tightened, memory stirring like an old tide. He too knew the weight of loss unspoken. He stepped closer, water swirling with his presence. Grief does not vanish, he said, but it need not chain you. The siren's gaze darkened, filled with doubt. Her voice quivered, fragile as broken coral. You speak as if it is simple, yet you are a god. Poseidon's expression softened, though sorrow gleamed in his eyes. Even gods bear grief, he admitted, his voice low. I have lost as you have lost. The sea remembers. Silence stretched between them, thick with shared memory. The siren's heart faltered, but curiosity stirred. What did you lose? she asked, almost too soft to hear. Poseidon's hand tightened on his trident, eyes distant. Once, I gave my love to a mortal, he said. Her laughter still lingers in the waves, though she is gone. The siren stilled, struck by his confession. In his voice, she heard her own pain reflected. You understand, she breathed, the words breaking in awe. Poseidon's nod was slow, heavy as the tide. More than you know, he said, his gaze steady. The siren's throat tightened, her song threatening to break again. But this time, it was not grief alone that swelled. It was kinship, a fragile bond born of shared loss. She closed her eyes, her heart trembling. Her song rose once more. Softer, gentler, it carried both her sorrow and his confession. Two threads, woven into one melody of mourning. The trench glowed faintly, as if touched by dawn. Poseidon's eyes closed, the song washing over him. He felt the weight of centuries shift in the current. This was no longer just her voice, it was their truth. The ocean responded, waves rising in rhythm with her song. Above, sailors whispered prayers, unsure why they felt moved. Children stirred from dreams, their hearts lighter without knowing why. The siren's song reached farther than she imagined. She opened her eyes, startled by its vast reach. My voice, it touches even the living? She asked. Poseidon's nod was slow, his tone solemn. Yes, he said, for truth cannot be bound by depth. Her chest ached, but not from sorrow alone. It was the ache of something reborn, fragile, yet alive. The siren placed a hand upon her chest. I do not know if I can bear it, she whispered. Poseidon's gaze softened, deep as the seafloor. You are not meant to bear it alone, he said. Her eyes widened, shimmering with disbelief. Then who bears it with me? The sea itself, Poseidon answered, his voice vast. And those who hear, who carry your song within. The siren's heart swelled, heavy yet lightened. For the first time she believed she was not alone. Her song trembled, but it did not break. It rose, full of grief, love, and fragile hope. The ocean carried it onward, unending, eternal. The ocean was restless, stirred by songs it had not carried for ages. Waves whispered along distant shores, carrying echoes of sorrow and light. Mortals felt it in dreams, though they could not name the source. In the trench, Poseidon stood still, his gaze deep and unyielding. The siren hovered before him, her song fading to silence. Her eyes glimmered, uncertain, but her heart beat with fragile courage. You have shown me truth, she whispered. But what comes after? Poseidon's trident pulsed faintly, casting light through the abyss. After truth comes choice, he said, his tone low but steady. Her breath caught, her lips parting in hesitation. Choice? She asked, the word trembling like a ripple. He nodded, his presence vast as the tides. You may return to silence, or you may carry this song forward. The siren's body tensed, her mind torn between fear and hope. Her voice quivered, soft as seagrass swaying. If I sing, will the curse remain? Poseidon lowered his gaze, shadows passing over his face. The curse is not undone, he said, but it can be reshaped. She pressed her hands to her chest, pain stirring beneath her ribs. Her song had been grief for so long, she feared to change it. And if I fail? She asked, her tone breaking. Poseidon stepped closer, water bending around his form. Failure is part of the tide, he said, calm yet firm. It falls, it rises, yet it never ends. Her eyes shimmered, uncertain tears held back by resolve. She thought of her sisters, long lost to silence. She thought of the sailor, his memory bound in waves. And she thought of herself, fragile yet alive in this moment. Her song stirred in her chest, waiting to be freed. She closed her eyes, her body trembling. Then her lips parted, and her voice returned. It was softer than before, yet steadier. It carried sorrow, but also courage. It spoke of grief, but also of love that endured. The melody wrapped around the trench, lifting shadows from its depths. Coral glowed faintly, stirred by her voice. Even the smallest fish swam closer, listening without fear. The ocean itself seemed to lean toward her song. Poseidon's chest tightened as he heard her voice shift. This was no longer the song of despair. It was the song of choice, fragile but real. The siren gasped between notes, her throat raw with change. Yet she continued, refusing silence, embracing truth. Her melody grew, stronger, layered with pain and light. It carried the weight of her past and the promise of more. Above, the sea shifted, waves calming under the moon. Sailors at sea lifted their heads, breath caught in awe. They heard her voice as if the ocean itself sang. Children stirred in their beds, soothed by dreams of water. And far away, hearts burdened by grief felt lighter. The siren's song had reached farther than she imagined. She opened her eyes, startled by its vastness. I touched them, she whispered in disbelief. Poseidon inclined his head, his gaze solemn. You touched the living because you sang with truth. Her heart swelled, fragile and fierce all at once. She had been a curse, and now she was more. But fear still lingered, heavy as the deep. What if the curse twists again? She asked softly. Poseidon's voice was steady, vast as the sea. Then sing again. Each song reshapes what was broken. Her lips parted, her chest rising with trembling breath. For the first time, she believed him. Her voice rose again, clear, aching, alive. The trench shimmered with light, no longer only a tomb. It was becoming a cradle, carrying both sorrow and rebirth. Poseidon stood at its heart, silent but steadfast. And the siren sang on, no longer bound, but choosing. The ocean hushed, as if holding its breath for the final note. The siren floated in the trench, her body trembling yet alive. Her song still echoed, weaving sorrow and light into endless waves. Above, the sea calmed, its surface smooth beneath the stars. Sailors on distant ships lowered their heads in silence, listening. They did not know her name, yet they felt her truth. Poseidon stood before her, trident lowered, his eyes solemn. You have carried what no soul should bear alone, he said. The siren's lips quivered, her eyes bright with tears. For so long I thought I was nothing but a curse. Her voice cracked, but her heart beat strong beneath it. Poseidon reached out, his presence vast, yet gentle as tide. You are not a curse, he said. You are a song. The words struck her deeper than any silence ever had. Her body shivered, not from grief, but from release. For centuries she had drowned in loss, believing it eternal. Now, for the first time, she felt the sea carry her, not as a prison, but as a cradle of memory. Her tears mingled with the current, yet did not sink her. She lifted her chin, her voice rising once more. This time, her song was not sorrow, nor only hope. It was wholeness, the vastness of all she had lived. It carried pain, but also the strength to endure it. It carried longing, but also the memory of love once true. And it carried her choice, free and unbroken at last. The ocean quivered, glowing faintly with her melody. Coral shone with colors long forgotten in the dark. Creatures swam nearer, unafraid, drawn to her living truth. Even the rocks seemed to hum in resonance with her. Poseidon closed his eyes, his heart stirred in silence. He had seen countless tides rise and fall without end. But this song was unlike any he had known before. It was fragile, imperfect, yet radiant with renewal. The siren's gaze met his, fierce yet tender. "Will they remember me?" she asked, her voice trembling. Poseidon's nod was slow, his tone as vast as waves. "They will not remember your name, but they will feel you. They will know the ocean sings with sorrow and love alike." Her breath caught, her chest aching with both grief and pride. For she understood, her story was not gone, but transformed. Her curse had not ended, but it had been rewritten. Her song would ripple beyond her, touching lives unseen. She sang again, softer, lighter, fading into the current. The trench glowed one last time, then softened to calm. Above, the sea stretched endlessly beneath the stars. Sailors dreamed of voices that healed instead of haunted. Children awoke with tears that felt like rain and hope. The world had shifted gently, carried by a song reborn. Poseidon raised his trident, the light dimming to silence. He turned from the siren, yet carried her song within. It would linger in him as it lingered in the sea. For even gods could be changed by truth sung aloud. The siren drifted into the current, no longer bound. Her voice rose faintly, carried into the vast horizon. It was no longer a lament. It was a promise. And the ocean, eternal and vast, carried it without end. Her curse had become her gift, her silence transformed. Her song was no longer the sound of despair. It was the voice of the sea itself, alive, eternal.